We'll still talk about it, okay?
I know. I'm sorry.
It wasn't
Okay, everybody.
really rude of you, Elizabeth.
It's 5 o'clock,
Oh
so
my God.
we want to get started. Welcome to the very first Citizens Budget Review Task Force. According to some people in the audience who are historians, it's the very first one in the history of the village of Islamorada. And so I want to thank you for coming tonight. I'm going to introduce the task force in a couple minutes. I'm Ron Saunders. I'm the new village manager. I started April 21st. And one of the first things I said was we want to be more transparent and also to get a lot more citizen input. Obviously, the budget is probably the most important thing we do for the village, and we want to get a lot of input there. So we appointed a task force of 5 members, 3 of whom are here today. 2 cannot attend, but they have been actively participating. The role of the task force was to have an independent review of our budget, our processes, have full access to all of our information, and to our staff. And to their credit, all 5 members have taken advantage of that and have done a lot of background work, a lot of work with our staff. And before we go any further, let me thank them for their service and introduce them. And they're going to give their own reports. And by the way, it was independent. There's been no meetings, no secret meetings, no open meetings. I specifically asked them when I appointed them to not speak to each other or have a meeting. And the reason for that was I wanted it to be an independent review. We didn't want them talking and agreeing on things before this meeting. So tonight's meeting will be the first time members of the task force have heard from the other members. And one thing we're seeing is they're agreeing on some things without knowing it. And we're going to go forward, and I've already been thinking about having a public meeting now of the 5 of them with everybody else. In other words, tonight they'll be giving their individual reports. We'd like to follow up with maybe another meeting. Now they've heard each other after tonight with another public meeting, noticed meeting, and then have another round of reports. So with that, before we go any further, let me have them introduce themselves, and then we have 2 that may or not zoom in, but let's introduce the ones that are here. Start with Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth Jolin, longtime resident, past councilwoman, and looking forward to the conversation.
Dr. Larry Dalton, resident of Islamorada, very pleased to be able to participate.
Stephanie Scuderi, longtime resident of Islamorada. Happy to be here.
And we also have Joe Roth, who many of you know, Reagan Roth Insurance. He had another meeting tonight, but he's going to be hopefully tuning in. And then Joseph. He's on Zoom. And we also have Joseph Giovanetta, who's with Alma Wealth, and is he the one on Zoom, not Joe Roth? Yeah. Okay. And so we'll Joe, is it better for him to go first, or does he want to wait? Because he's out of town. I don't know if he's traveling or not. So in any event, we have all 5 that have been participating, and once again, they have reports. If you go online to our website, when you look at the agenda, which has been posted, on the left side, it has every document that we have provided to the task force. It's all been public record. Prior budgets, current budget, our financial statements, our study for the salaries, all that's been provided to the task force is going to be available and is available to the public. So we want to make sure you all understand that they've had access, but nothing that the public wouldn't have access to. With that, does Joe want to go now? Are you available, Joe? Okay.
Hello?
Okay,
Yeah.
Joe, introduce yourself, and then maybe you have a brief summary of what you want to report.
Hi, my name is Joe Giovanetta, and I am a resident of Islamorada. Thank you for having me. I'm actually on my way, Ron, and I'll probably be there in about 15 minutes, but I'll be happy to just, proceed and keep it moving. My report is that I requested some information in the areas that I have some knowledge and experience in, the employee benefits area, the cash management area, the bond refunding area. I asked some specific questions about that, and Jamie did get back to me about the employee benefits, and I can see that everyone is a member of the Florida retirement system. It looks like, everything's in order there from my perspective. I'm still waiting on some information on those other 2 areas, and by hopefully next week, your other meeting, I'll have some more to report on the cash management policies and procedures, things like investment policy statements and whatever you have in place for, handling those kind of things, if there's any costs involved, what they might be, and also with the request I had made for policies and procedures as they relate to bond refunding and what triggers that and when, and some things of that nature. But I won't waste a lot of the room's time on that right now, since those answers haven't been sent back to me just yet. Maybe by next week we'll know better on that. But I'll be there in a few minutes to
Okay.
attend the meeting.
I didn't know how far
I'll be
along you were, so,
disruptive. I'll just sneak in the back or something.
Okay.
All right.
Once again, that was Joseph Giovanetta.
Okay.
And he's going to be here in a few minutes. Before we go any further, I always like to recognize our council people who are in the audience. We have our Vice Mayor, Don Horton. We have Council Member Deb Gillis and Council Member Anna Richards. Mayor Mahoney's out of town, and I think Member Friedman, I think, may be trying to make it, but I'm not sure if he's going to make it today or not. But we appreciate a majority of the council being here. We also have many of our staff directors here, including our interim finance director, Hattie Jenkins, who we appreciate you being here. And just before we get going, I do want to thank Hattie, because our former finance director resigned unexpectedly to move out of town, and it kind of threw us a little bit behind, and Hattie stepped into the breach, and we are, I think, well along where we need to be. But that's why we weren't able to answer all the questions that some of the task force members asked, but we are still going to try to answer them. But it has put us off as far as answering questions. We have to stay focused on getting that budget where it needs to be. With that, let me go and turn it over to, let's just briefly give a report, or however you want to do it. We'll start with Elizabeth.
Okay, okay. So I'm just going to run down what I had submitted to you. Okay, so I reviewed.
And by the way, her report is one of the ones posted on the website. So if you want to see what she's talking about, if you go to our website to the left of the agenda, I posted, we got 2 reports in writing from Elizabeth and from Joe Roth. So you can see their reports online.
Okay, so I've approached this on a high level sort of overview, reviewing the budget as a living document that reflects the village's priorities, values, and vision. In areas I found to be questionable, I noted possible policy change or action items to clarify and or justify expenditures, and I'm a firm believer that this is the time in looking at the budget to shape policy. Okay, so my little review outlines some, not all. Ooh, I hear a background noise there. Is it talk quieter? No. Oh, okay. Areas of concern and policy changes to improve operations, increase efficiency, and support long-term planning. It also highlights the need for proactive investment in 2 critical areas that I feel currently lack sufficient budgetary attention, which are land acquisition and affordable housing. So just briefly, I was looking at staffing levels and efficiencies. My concern is that compared to other municipalities in the Florida Keys, our staffing levels appear to be somewhat high. This may indicate inefficiencies and potential overstaffing. Policy recommendations might be to conduct staff audit using peer municipality benchmarks. Legal fees. The cost of legal services from Weiss Serota seems extremely high and lacks clear justification. A policy recommendation might be to analyze detailed billing from Weiss Serota over the past year, explore using a hybrid legal model, part-time in-house counsel combined with contracted services, perhaps task the manager with renegotiating the current legal services contract to establish cost controls and clarify expectations, to look closely at that line item. Wastewater operations are another concern that I see. Despite receiving $2 million in grants annually, it seems that the wastewater system appears to operate at a loss. I think it's something we need to look at. Again, policy recommendations might be to finally address this issue, conduct a comprehensive financial and operational audit. Let's just leave it there. A transportation fund oversight. My concern here is that doesn't seem to be a formal oversight structure or strategic plan for this fund that is, I think, supposed to be maintaining and improving town roads, leading to reactive rather than proactive management. Policy recommendations might be to just assign some clear responsibility for that fund and how it's overseen. And I just also want to say that, and I might be speaking for everyone here, this is not criticism in any way of anything that's going on here. It's simply observations that anybody can take or leave. One of the other concerns I had here was annual pay raises without reviews. It seems that we do across the board raises. They are granted yearly, despite uncertainty about whether the employee performance review system has been implemented. A policy recommendation might be to figure out whether that has been implemented, transition to a merit-based raise system to ensure accountability and reward high performance. The marina operating and reporting is a concern. It's a very valuable town asset. Limited reporting makes it difficult to assess its profitability and operational efficiency. A recommendation might be to require detailed quarterly reports on financial and operational performance, benchmark services and fees against other similar facilities, and really look at that area as an opportunity to increase revenue through out of that location. Parks and pool revenue. Let's see. I think just briefly, I would love to see a deeper dive into looking at that to see if there is more revenue that could be generated from that operation. And then briefly here, I have a lobbyist fee. It's a line item, but while not disputing that the village does need a lobbyist, without ongoing communication with that firm, it's just a waste of money. We need to just create a system to facilitate that relationship with the lobbyist. And then two areas that I see are lacking in our budget is our land acquisition for stewardship and strategic planning, which would address conservation, resilience, and growth management goals. And then, of course, I think we need to add into our budget funding for affordable housing. And we talk about that, and this would be the time to do that, to create some dedicated funding to that area. And so that's what I have for right now.
Thank you. And a couple of points. One is that we take everything said tonight as constructive criticism. We know that there's some things we need to work on, but that we need to have them first come out, and then we're going to be addressing them. For example, the legal fees, I'm already... and one thing, I think it shows tonight that they haven't been talking, because I think you're going to hear the same thing from several of them, because I've already talked with them. And I think that's good, because they have done this independently. So, for example, the issue of legal fees has come up by more than one of the task force members. So we're looking at that. A couple of the recommendations from Elizabeth I've already started working on as far as the line items of the budget to recommend to the council. We've talked about the salaries with our HR director, Jamie Terry, who's here tonight. So we're aware of some of the concerns with that, and also with benefits, which you'll hear in just a minute, I'm sure. So once again, this is constructive criticism. We're not taking any of this personally, and we take it in the way they're meaning it is that they want to make the village better, and we appreciate that. With that, we'll move on to Dr. Larry Dalton.
Thank you. It's an honor to be selected to serve on this committee and assist the village leadership in creating a future budget for the village which would be fair to the taxpayers as well as provide the needed services to the residents of Islamorada. I've reviewed the financial reports, previous budgets, and supplemental information provided by the village in great detail. I've spoken with dozens of taxpayers and residents in our community and have done independent research on a variety of subjects pertinent to this task. I've had no communication with any of the other members of the Citizens Budget Review Committee. The village of Islamorada has about 7,000 residents. This number has remained stable for about the past decade, maybe more. The village has approximately 5,000 registered voters and 4,418 residential taxpayers. This is important because while we serve 7,000, there's only 4,418 people paying into it. The stability of these numbers over time does not correlate with the marked growth of the expense and size of the government of the village. Some estimates indicate a 70% growth in the village budget over the past 5 years, which far outpaced the cost of living or inflationary changes. The budget, it is a complex system with multiple revenue sources that include property taxes, grants, and other sources of tax-related income. There are departments within the village that generate revenue and some that actually cover their cost. While property taxes and tax-related income remain relatively predictable, the grant revenue is concerning and makes that part of the budget-making process difficult unless those monies are guaranteed in advance of the finalization of the budget. Monies from grants are approximately $6 million in last year's budget, which was a total of $47.8 million. This money cannot be counted on in the future, and our budget moving forward should reflect that. Property tax revenue is generated by both property value and the rate of taxation. The rate of taxation has increased significantly, exceeding the cost of living and inflationary pressures, leading to a $17 million plus tax base. Please recall that the tax base is not made of the 7,000 residents, but is borne by just over 4,400. The expense of the village can be looked at in multiple different ways. I will analyze the expenses from an operational budget perspective as well as a personnel expense perspective. It appears that the budget for each department is created by the department head and presented to the finance department and then eventually to the village council for its approval. The department heads do not appear to be incentivized to decrease their expenses or, to put it another way, provide more value for the taxpayers. In comparing previous year's budget, both proposed and finalized, I did not find a single line item carried over from year to year that stayed the same or decreased. In fact, some expenses categories increased by hundreds of thousands of dollars with no apparent historical precedent. There does not appear to be a systematic way that the operational budgets are modified year over year or by department or department. The village has 116 full-time employees. In looking at municipalities with similar budget, this number is high. And many residents I spoke with feel that the village is overstaffed for the services provided. The number of employees should be critically examined by each department head, human resources, the finance department, as well as the village manager and the village council. However, the number of employees is not my concern in looking at the personnel expense and its cost per employee, which is really what we need to look at here. In both the public and private sector, the cost for employees is the number one expense to be dealt with. Employee salaries and benefits make up this number in the private sector. The total cost for employees should be about 120% of their base salary, which includes benefits and retirement. It is not that case in the village, where many employees' total cost is greater than 160% of their base salary. Employee insurance aspect of the benefit plan offered by the village is not a middle-of-the-road plan. It is not a Cadillac plan. It is a gold-plated Rolls-Royce benefit plan. The plan offers only one option for health care, as completely paid for by the taxpayers with no input from the employee. Most municipalities with similar budget offer multiple options and share the cost of insurance with the employee. The village also pays 100% for vision and dental insurance for each employee, which, again, most municipalities of similar size allow an option for the employee to buy into this. An expense, again, not borne by the taxpayer. The most egregious issue in the benefit package, however, is that the taxpayers are footing the bill for the families and dependents of the employees by approximately 97%. This benefit is not found in the private sector, nor is it offered by other municipalities with the same or similar budget. Eliminating the dependent insured from the benefit package will save the village close to $1 million per year. The overtime cost in our village is a great concern. Each department is budgeted with an overtime expense, with some department overtime expenditures estimated at being over $750,000 for overtime. One department has an overtime expense which is 3 times greater than the base salary expense. Overtime is not only increases the base expenses of the employee, but significantly increases the payroll tax, which the village is obviously required to pay. The pension expense, and maybe Joe can get into this in greater detail, is up to 40% of the department's base salary. Now, I'm not an expert in pension plans, but as I read it, the village should be putting about 4% of the salary in for the employee, but the expenses are 40% or greater. This is far higher than what it should be, and if not checked, has the potential to bankrupt the municipality. The village also owns multiple current properties which are not being used for public use and cost the village to maintain. This needs to be addressed. Recommendations. From the revenue standpoint, looking at the 23-24 budget, it appears that revenues exceeded expenses by $7.6 million. If we eliminate the grants from that number, we still overtax the citizens by $1.6 million. In light of this, I'd make the following recommendations. Decrease the tax rate by 10%. The ad valorem tax has increased significantly over the past few years and needs to be reduced, particularly in light of the increasing property values of this community. Number 2, hire a full-time grant writer to optimize the opportunities for free money which will assist in special projects throughout the community. Number 3, sell the properties which the village currently owns, which are not used for public use, and use that money to supplement the emergency funds, particularly in light of the decreased help from FEMA in the future. Also, a recommendation for instituting a metered parking program for downtown Islamorada, the Phils, and other areas within the village where parking is an issue. Along with this will come a new position of parking enforcement, which will carry the authority to enforce parking regulations and fines. This will be a part-time position. Right now, we are paying close to $100,000 a year to monitor the Phils. Recommendations to reduce the expenses of the village include the following. Institute a hiring freeze until citywide positions are analyzed for their direct benefit to the village and to ensure that we do not have redundancy in labor. Institute a wage freeze until a merit-based system for raises can be instituted. Blanket raises for any cause do not promote excellence in the workforce. Require all department heads to present a budget with a minimum of 10% reduction in operating expenses from the previous year. Department operational budgets need to be reviewed on a quarterly basis and reported to the village manager and village council. Adjust the, quote, other salaries and wages from the fire department budget from $552,000 to $52,000, saving the taxpayers $500,000. This recommendation is directly from our fire chief who I spoke with today about this. The village's health insurance package needs to be totally revamped. Currently, we offer a one-size-fits-all option to employees and their families. This particular option is incredibly expensive. The new plan should include multiple options for health care, which include the employee to cover a significant percentage of the cost of the plan for the employees themselves. Dependent coverage by the village should be eliminated, but offered to the employee at their expense at a discounted rate, which the village would be able to negotiate for them. Vision and dental will also be options borne at the cost of the employee. The cost of the village for health insurance should not exceed $500 per employee per month. Life scanning testing should be eliminated except where statutorily required. The pension plan needs to be fully evaluated for excess costs to the village and brought in line with other municipalities in the same budget classification. Eliminate overtime in all departments. Abuse of this in multiple departments is exceptionally concerning, and eliminate it will save taxpayers over $1 million annually. All departments with a budget of $3 million or more should undergo an independent audit on a biannual basis. Consider outsourcing of all services in each department with the total cost of the department in mind, including both operational and personnel costs, including benefits. These could be outsourced to county or private companies. In some instances, outsources to the county may make more sense due to the redundancy of personnel and/or economies of scale. In summary, the village of Islamorada is an amazing place to work, grow, and live. Its citizens and taxpayers are lucky to live here. That being said, the government of Islamorada has grown at an expanded rate that exceeds the population growth, with an increased cost to taxpayers without significant amount and type of services provided. The government should focus its resources on safety of its citizens, with any additional resources hopefully to improve the quality of life of the people who live here. That being said, the burden of taxes on the homeowners in this community is too high and needs to be reduced. I recommend a 20% reduction in the ad valorem taxes for the village of Islamorada. I also recommend a 20% reduction in the cost of government, primarily through a 10% reduction in operating costs, the elimination of overtime, and the revamping of the benefit structure, which now costs an additional 60% over the salary of most of the employees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dalton. We'll next hear from Stephanie Scuderi.
Okay. That is a tough act to follow. Thank you. I didn't really come up with, I don't know if you can hear me. I'm not used to being up here. I didn't come up with a report. I didn't come up with recommendations. I came up with a bunch of questions, which I had forwarded to the village. And they're not, as Elizabeth pointed out, they're not like, I'm going to put my auditor hat on and be like, gotcha. Just kind of, we have a really interesting situation in this village. We've had, 3 or 4 village managers in the last 3 or 4 years. And the budget is, I took the budget from 2022-23 and looked at 24-25, and that's what I looked at, right? That's like, okay, well, we had 2 village managers, maybe 2.5 village managers during that time, and we've heard a lot of things that have happened at the village because of village manager turnover, right? And so kind of like budget creep and what's happening and why. So my questions, like I said, I don't have recommendations, but I do have, I say like questions, like Elizabeth said, the lobbyists, like we pay $180,000 for lobbyists. Okay, what do we get for that? And I'm not going to go through all of my, questions, but $750,000 for Weiss Serota. I don't know if it makes more sense to have in-house attorneys. Does it? Like, we've been there, and then we've been with Weiss, and then we went back to internal attorneys, and then we went back to Weiss, and maybe there's some analysis that could be done there, just, deciding like, well, really what is working well, and the quality of the advice that we're getting. Ron, nothing personal. The village manager salary has increased 20% in 2 years. Like, who has a job that their salary increases 20%? Why is that? Right? Again, all I was doing was looking at the budget. It didn't have answers in it. It just had numbers. And it might be perfect. It might be the perfect number for the village manager. And I would never want to take anything away from you, Ron. Just kind of want to understand, like, in what world do salaries go up 20% in 2 years? Overtime was $50,000 this year when it was $1,000 2 years ago. And I don't even know like how these things work. I didn't even look at the number of employees. I mean, I did look at the number of employees, but I didn't look at it that way, right? So, but overtime up to $50,000, that's what's driving the overtime is really the question. There's professional services. Let's just look at like, what are the big things? Finance and administration, a 10% 2-year increase in wages. Again, guys, I don't want you guys to hate me. I'm just pulling this out. Overall, that category had a 33% increase in 2 years. Insurance had a 58% increase. Okay, here's something that might sound petty, but in every single category, every single department has a GoDaddy line item, right? Okay, so I've had a website.
GoDaddy line item.
Right? Who is our GoDaddy person? Because there's a lot of money going to GoDaddy. I've had a GoDaddy website, and it certainly didn't cost anything near what this was. So that might be something kind of easy to look at. Professional services and code compliance doubled. The cost doubled in 2 years. And this is just my ignorance. The contract for local law enforcement for the sheriff's office, and I might be like putting a bullseye on my back with this one. Why did the contract increase $800,000 in 2 years? What are our incremental services because we don't have incremental employees? Why does the village pay for the sheriff's chamber and rotary dues? What is license plate monitoring? I don't know what that is. Over and above, and the village pays nearly $100,000 for freight, postage, repair, maintenance, office supplies, and expenses and operating supplies for the sheriff's office. Could the sheriff's department really have $90,000 of required operating supplies that need to be funded by the village? Is this commensurate with what's happening in other municipalities? They're just really big numbers. Especially after listening to the budget meeting for the county 2 days ago. And also under the sheriff's department, between 2022 and 23 to 24-25, the differential in other salaries and wages plus overtime is staggering. In 2 years, the medical director's salary increased 30%. I mean, like, I really should have gotten a job with the village.
It's the same thing I thought.
Right? Okay, a couple of other things here. Public Works. There's a 33% increase in Public Works wages. Was there a commensurate change in headcount? I don't think so. Professional services, $27,000 2 years ago, and now $1,000. They also, Public Public Works has a $1,100 GoDaddy budget. Right, and I'm not picking on GoDaddy. It's just that when you go through the operating budgets of everything, every single department has a GoDaddy line item, and there's something there that needs to be addressed. Parks and Rec, their expenses total 37% increase in over 2 years. Will the pool be resurfaced this year? There was a Miller Lake master plan that we paid $189,000 for, plus $50,000 for them to implement it. But when you look at Miller Lake, they did the same thing for the city of Jupiter, which is, I'd say, significantly bigger than Islamorada, and they did it for $135,000. And yet there's nothing budgeted for pickleball. Nothing budgeted for cleaning services. Again, looking at the 2-year difference. And this one's kind of, honestly, just going down the lines. Amazon purchases in 2022-23 were $9,000. And then in this year's budget, they're $15,000. There's got to be some overlap in administrative costs and Amazon purchases. I guess I should probably, in my personal budget, have Amazon purchases and just like blend it. Right? Solid waste, 16% increase in 2 years. So I think that that's definitely something that we need to look at, right? Because we changed who provides our solid waste. And I think they're great. They come and pick up my garbage. I don't have a problem with them. But they were brought in at a certain price point, and now the price is going up. So where are we going with that? I'm not saying that we shouldn't face a price increase with that, but where are we going with that? Transportation, what projects are planned and what are those going to cost? In 2 years, the transportation expenditures increased 68%, which I think is just kind of crazy. We're doing a road elevation study. I know the county did road elevation studies using grant money, but they're not moving forward with any road elevation projects because they don't have any money to do road elevation projects. So I think that we also need to look at what's happening in other municipalities with regard to similar challenges. And before we start going down the road and being like, yeah, we're going to raise the roads. Well, let's look and see why maybe they're not being raised in other parts of our county. Affordable housing is just a big giant question mark for me. I'll just leave it with that. But I'm also like, you budget to a plan, right? So I don't have any recommendations because I don't have a plan. But I do have, based on what I've seen happen in our in the village for the last couple of years with regard to administration and turnover and strife. And then when you look at the budget and there's like all kinds of things that like get, for lack of a better word, wacky. How do we bring that back into control now that we have a village manager that will be here forever? And where's the plan? And then what do we need to budget to support that plan?
Thanks, Steph. And once again, this is the beginning of the beginning. This is not meant to be the final report. We just wanted to get the ball rolling and get some questions out there. We're still working on answers for, and we're not taking anything personally. This is constructive criticism, and by the way, I know all 5 task force members before they were appointed, so we knew what we were getting into. They're very detail-oriented, because that's what we wanted. We wanted people who took it seriously, which you obviously did, and would go in there and dig into the details, because that's what we want. We want the public to be informed, because you have had more information than the average citizen, obviously, and we appreciate the fact that you have taken the time to really give us this kind of input. It's a continuing process as far as getting answers, because you brought up some points tonight that we're still working on. We're going to get back to you before the budget is finally approved by the council. And like I said, we have a majority of the council here. They're hearing what you're saying, and trust me, they're going to want answers to some of the things too. So we appreciate that, and we have we already heard from Joe earlier. So Joe, you want to give us any person?
Hello, I'm Joe Giovanetta. I wasn't expecting to be here tonight, but we were able to juggle our schedule on the way back, and I joined by Zoom, I guess, for a few minutes. I don't know how much of that you got, but I spent my time on this concentrating on areas where I have some expertise, you know, in the pension area, in the cash management area, and also on the bond refinancing and you know, what would trigger those kind of things. I was looking for those policies. I submitted some questions. I don't know, Ron, are those questions that I submitted on the website? Or maybe I can raise a few of them? Or Jamie got back to me on the pension with some of the answers, but with regards to, for example, I was looking for the governance and oversight and who's responsible for the oversight and execution of the city's investment policy statement. When was the investment policy statement last reviewed and updated? Is there a formally adopted investment policy that complies with state statutes? Are there regular reporting requirements for the council or public, monthly, quarterly, etc.? Are internal controls in place to prevent fraud or mismanagement? In the cash management area, what's the average daily balance held by the city and how is it managed? How is cash flow forecasting conducted? Is excess cash segmented by purpose, operating reserves, capital funds? How quickly is idle cash swept into interest-bearing accounts? Are ACH tools used to optimize liquidity? Is there an investment practice? What types of investments are permitted under the current policy? What's the average duration and credit quality of the investment portfolio? Are outside investment managers or advisors used? How does the city measure investment performance relative to benchmarks? Are stress testing or scenario planning tools used? In the reporting and transparency, are investment reports available to the public or posted online? What is the process for documenting and approving strategy changes? Are investment results independently audited or reviewed annually? What are the policies for managing interest rate risk, credit risk, and concentration risk? Are all depository banks and brokers properly vetted and insured and collateralized? Are there limits on holding in any single security or institution? Are restricted and unrestricted funds clearly separated? Are there established reserves and targets for operating expenses? Does the city have a capital improvement plan aligned with cash flow? The legal and compliance, does the investment policy comply with applicable laws and statutes? Are relevant staff, council members trained or certified in public funding investing? Is there an ethics policy in place to prevent conflicts of interest? And as it relates to municipal debt refinancing review checklist, who has the authority to initiate a refinancing? Is there a debt policy or ordinance guiding refinancing decision? Has the municipality adopted any limits on debt service or other debt burden? What criteria are used to determine if refinancing is appropriate? Is there a target savings threshold required for refinancing? Are both tax-exempt and taxable refundings evaluated? Who's the municipal advisor and bond counsel, and how are they selected? Are competitive or negotiated bids used for new or refinanced debt? Are ratings agencies consulted before the refinancing? Are call provisions evaluated before refinancing? What portion of the debt is callable, and what are the next call dates? Has the city considered bank loan versus public offering or smaller refinancing needs? Are refinancing resolutions formally approved and disclosed? Is refinancing reviewed for IRS arbitrage and SEC disclosure compliance? How's public transparency maintained during the refinancing process? Is there a post-issuance compliance policy in place? Are refinancing outcomes reported to the council with savings analysis? Is there a master debt service schedule tracking both original and refinance bonds? As it relates to the retirement plan, what types of retirement plans are offered? That was disclosed in there. And Jamie did get back to me about the retirement plans. I understand we participate in the Florida retirement system. So some of these questions I'm not going to go through because they're not applicable. I've gotten the answers and will be refined in the final report. But those first two categories of debt refinancing and cash flow management, I'm still pending some answers on. So hopefully we'll get those answers posted to the website.
Thanks, Joe. And I think you can tell by the number of questions why we haven't been able to answer them. We basically have two staff people, Hattie and Callie, who have been working on the budget, and so obviously we want to get to all these questions. My intention would be on behalf of the village to have all these questions answered by the end of the budget process. We have a newsletter that's very popular, thanks to Stephanie and our staff, and so we're going to try to start putting some of these questions when we get answers to them in the newsletter, so the public will hear the answer to these questions. So if we answer as many as we can. We know that we didn't answer all of them because obviously some of them are pretty extensive, and we have to have our staff time devoted right now to getting the budget out by the next couple of weeks. But we do intend to get answers to all those questions. I don't want to respond to each one because I think I'd like to have the public have an opportunity to either give their input or ask questions of the panel. So we had a sign-up sheet. If you want to raise your hand, if you wanted to speak, who would like to kick it off? Joe?
How you doing? My name is Joe Wishmeyer from Plantation Key. In the past, we had been promised to have line item reviews to eliminate indifferences, outdated expenses, and non-essential items. It's wonderful to see that now we're getting to that. One of the biggest questions is, why do we pay the most per person in the county with less area and fewer people? For example, with 2,500 less people than Marathon, we pay more than double per person. Why is this? Well, it is very encouraging to have a citizen advisory group appointed by the village manager to review the budget line by line to help improve the budget, including excessive overtime like at the Phil's, which we don't even have a lease for anymore, which was discussed earlier. In 2020 to 2021, the total budget was only $35.8 million. Since then, property values have risen exponentially, raising taxable income to the village. Yet the budget has risen to $60.7 million in the past 5 years. Why? 5 years ago, was our level of service really that inefficient? I don't think so. I haven't noticed much difference. Hopefully this committee will be able to look into our current spending and come up with either an explanation on why or a way to reduce the budget. We, the public, look forward to having more and more of these budget workshops in this crucial time. 2 points I would like to make too, in my opinion, and I bring it up many, many times. I believe there's a big difference between what we call affordable housing and what we really need, which is workforce housing. And I wish we could really concentrate on the workforce housing. All of our workforce doesn't have full families, so a one-bedroom apartment would be good, something they can afford, our bartenders or our waiters. I do have one question that I didn't understand. Sir, you said that 4,418 people pay taxes, yet we have 7,000 residents. I don't understand. Why is there such a difference?
Well, you have children, you have people that
Okay.
rent, and you have homeowners.
But the people who rent, I mean, they rent from an owner, so then they should still have to pay the taxes.
But the owner may be out of state. The owner may be out of county, so
Okay.
that doesn't.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, I really appreciate some of these questions you guys come up with. Top notch. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Joe. And to clarify, property taxes are paid by homeowners, non-resident homeowners, and commercial properties too. So when you're looking at it, understand that the tax base is broader than just homeowners. Many people own commercial property here. They pay pretty high taxes, recognizing that homeowners are protected by Save Our Homes. They have a cap on their assessment every year that doesn't apply to commercial properties, for example. So that's one reason why you've seen an increase in revenues, because they're applying the millage rate times a higher value every year. So just for clarification purposes. And once again, for the schedule, on the agenda, next to the agenda is our schedule for the budget. So I want to remind everybody that next Tuesday, we have a regular village council meeting. Once again, a majority of our council is sitting here tonight, and we'll be setting a tentative millage rate for publication for trim notices. And before anybody gets shocked, it always comes in high, and then you reduce it. You can never increase that millage rate. You can only decrease it. So every year, every local government in the county always comes out at that higher rate and reduces it. So once again, a little preview, it's probably going to be higher than you might like it to be, but that's the process we go through. That's next week, that's Tuesday. Then there's going to be 3 budget workshops for the council on August 5th, 6th, and 7th. They'll all be at 3 o'clock right here, and we have different things for each one. I'd like to also include in those workshops maybe some answers to some of the things you're bringing up tonight, and hopefully some of the task force members can attend those budget workshops, which are obviously open to the public. And then the next step would be going to the council for the actual consideration of the budget. So there's a whole process. I'm going to go with every item. It's on the website next to the agenda. I believe we have one other speaker that signed up. Everybody's free to speak. I think, Sue, did you want to speak next?
This is really exciting. I'm really happy that you guys are here. I think that in the past, we've had very little input from the community, and you've already created greater ideas and questions than we've had, I think, in a total of the last 10 years. So I'm really pleased with what you're accomplishing. And I have a lot of issues of my own, and I'd like to communicate with you. I hope that we can get a means of communicating with the 5 of you so that we can all give you more ideas that we may have. And one of the things that I have been concerned about for a long time is virtually every council meeting, there are multiple times when we waive competitive bidding, and I think that we should stop that practice as often as we can, because competitive bidding is what gives us the best price for the services received. I agree that I think we need a grant writer. There's so many opportunities. The council did ask for a grant writer to be advertised, but I haven't seen that ad yet. I noticed that when you compare our budget to other areas, one of the things that really struck me was that in Marathon, a larger city than Alamorada, with the same sheriff that we have, they pay $2.6 million for the sheriff, and we pay $3.3 million, like significantly more for a town that we always think is safe. And I always wonder, they're about the same length as far as the length of US 1 and a larger group of people. And likewise, fire rescue in Marathon is $7.6 million. In Alamorada, it's 11.7, significantly more with less homes, less businesses here than we have there to protect. I'm sure that a significant amount of the fire rescue budget is for medical emergencies, but they have more people. Maybe they have a younger population, I'm not sure. The Miller Leg work that was done on Founders Park, We paid $175,000, according to the contract. You said it was $189,000. I wondered who directed them. The contract they signed said that it was to include all facilities at Founders Park, yet they didn't include the baseball field or the marina, which are two significant areas. And then they came up with over $750 million in improvements. Who forgot to tell them that we don't have $750 million sitting around? We have I think I found 4 departments that in the budget that was approved last year operated at a deficit, and the total budget was at a deficit, meaning that our fund balance was reduced significantly in the budget that was approved a year ago. We now know it's really important to protect our fund balance because of some of the changes that are about to happen to us. Transportation. I worry about what we're doing with transportation. In 1999, the county deeded all of the roads except US 1 to the village. And there are a lot of roads in the village. And I don't see where we're putting money aside or considering the repairs and there's going to reach a time, that's 25 years ago, and most of the roads have never been resurfaced, or there's a lot of work that could be done on those roads. And we own the bicycle path on Lower Matacumbe, and it's in horrible condition. It is like dangerous to walk on Lower Matacumbe at places because of the broken pavement. And the contract that we have with for solid waste provides a franchise fee, and the franchise fee is intentionally intended to cover the wear and tear on the roadways that those big old garbage trucks cause. And yet we spend it year after year after year on general fund issues instead of considering the fact that it was intended to keep our roads in good condition. Affordable housing, I think when I look at the problems with affordable housing, workforce housing, any kind of housing in this town is getting to be so outrageously expensive, and we don't have real funding sources that are rational. There are impact fees that don't make a lot of sense. If a new business comes in, they have to pay. They either have to create some housing or they have to pay an impact fee, but the impact fee doesn't come anywhere close to what the needs are. I believe that the affordable housing, instead of intending to build more housing, we know we're overgrown right now, we should be accumulating affordable housing funding to subsidize rents for existing homes, to encourage people to rent to long-term members of the workforce, so that we don't have to keep building more and more. It really bothers me that we go from one budget to the next budget and never see any financial reports. We are just left to trust, and I think it's really important for the public and the council to see reports at least quarterly, if not monthly. I always ask for them as a public record request and study them, and it just is amazing to me how we spend money. I have a question. A couple of you mentioned audits, and I really am confused. The county clerk is a constitutional officer, and he has been doing audits of various county departments, And I'm wondering, since he's with some of our financial questions, since we pay for the constitutional officers, and so that was a question I had. I have lots more of notes. I have pages of notes. And one of the things that, if I can have a couple more seconds, the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, with the state of Florida, has been sending correspondence to all the municipalities in the state of Florida aimed at rooting out, I'm quoting from an article, rooting out wasteful spending and improving government accountability. And I think, I haven't heard anything about it in Islamorada, but we certainly heard a lot about it 2 days ago at the county level, and all the things that they're doing to improve accountability and efficiency at the county level. And I hope that we will aim at doing some of the things that are really important in improving our reserves. It's really scary to think of the changes that are projected for FEMA and the reduction of funds that we may get back when there's a hurricane disaster that hits us, because we know it will happen sometime. We hope it's not anytime soon. But, if they're expecting a larger volume of the work to be done locally at our expense, that has to be accounted for in our reserves. And, they're even talking about eliminating FEMA completely, which would be a total problem to our finances. And so I hope that instead of having deficits in the future, budgeted deficits is just really a difficult thing to accept. I hope that we can increase our reserves. Thank you.
Any other people want to speak from the public?
Can I say something real quick? The budget meeting.
Come up, because people are listening online, they can't hear you.
Oh, it's not that big of a question. The other budget meetings that you have scheduled for 3 o'clock in the afternoon, will they also be available on Zoom for those that can't make it in person?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And once again, that schedule for the budget hearings is online on our website, so it has every meeting there. A couple things I wanted to bring up. Joe Roth, who could not be here, he told us in advance he couldn't make it. His written report is online next to the agenda. So if you scroll down to Council Communications, Joe Roth's written report is there, and he regrets not being able to be here tonight. But he is the one that suggested that maybe we have a future meeting with all 5 of them now that they've been able to hear each other, and have all 5 come together again in a public meeting and discuss, what they've with each other, but also start giving them some answers to their questions. It's a process. Speaking of a couple of things, we did have a meeting today with my 2 budget staff people about DOGE. We have gotten communication from the governor's office, and they are asking for information, and we are responding to it. But there's a lot of information to be put together. So we are aware of the states kind of following along with the federal. We're also very aware about the situation with FEMA, and we are seriously looking at what our reserves are. How many months of operation expenses, for example, do we want to have? We are meeting the standard now, but do we want to increase that? That's certainly something we're looking at, because we don't know what's going to happen with state and federal government reimbursements, for example. So we are considering hurricane operations. Chief Terry Abel is our major emergency management person, has been keeping us in the loop of what we need to be prepared for, but certainly reimbursements is a big deal. So we're looking at what kind of reserves would be required. Once again, on the other things, we're going to try to get answers to these questions. This is the beginning. And once again, last chance, anybody, including council members who want to say something, you can go ahead. If not, we'll go ahead and throw it back to the task force, maybe let them make some closing comments, and then we will, in the interim from this meeting, try to set up a public meeting with all 5 of them when they can all meet, and have another one of these with more answers to the questions. So I'll kick it back to Stephanie and go back this way.
Okay, thank you, Ron. And thank you, everybody, for your comments. I really just have a comment. Sue, thank you for your comments. And about reserves. and everybody's like doom and gloom, and we're going into storm season, or we're already in storm season, and what's going to happen. And I want to go back to 2017 and with Irma, and it was devastating, right? The whole ocean side of Isla Mirada was destroyed. Most of it didn't come back for a year, but the cleaning up of the road meant so much. And all of that happened. There was so much that happened in Isla Mirada that didn't happen anywhere else. It was like you knew that it was like the Twilight Zone. Like you drove, oh my goodness, now we're in Isla Mirada and everything feels better because we had the funds to clean things up. We had everything lined up. We had a village manager that had been there for several years, Seth. We had Maria as finance director, who I think she was here like since she was 12, right? I mean, she was here forever. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge that we don't have right now. And I'm not taking anything away from anybody. Again, like this was just kind of like, oh, let's look at the budget. Oh, that sounds like an interesting exercise. And so here we are. But I totally believe that this village is there's a reason why we live in the village. And I keep going back to Irma because psychologically, visually, physically, this village cleaned everything up in due course, and it really makes a huge difference. And then you like leave the village and drive up to Key Largo, and things were like not so great because the county was dealing with their own things, and we have a lot of variables with FEMA. But I do believe that we are able to get there for sure. But I do think that we've lost institutional knowledge. I do believe that we have to build our reserves. But I also think that we don't know, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with FEMA and with the government. So anyway, it's all crapshoot right now, but we'll keep at it.
Larry?
Thank you. Isla Mirada is an absolutely amazing place to live. And it's amazing because of its people. We all come because of the water, we all come because of the weather, but it's the people that make the difference. And the importance of how this government functions to those people is invaluable. I think that moving forward, clearly some of the concerns, and the reason we were able to clean up so quickly is because we had the funds to do it in the reserves. That's kind of what it, and the contracts to be able to get it done. I do think, however, that there is waste within the expenses of the city government. I think that the taxes are too high. And I think between the two of those, we need to reduce government spending and taxes. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Thank you. I'm hoping that as we wrap things up, we can get a handle on how this group can be very helpful to the council. Because what I'm hoping, or what I'm imagining, that this group has been created in order to alleviate some of the burden that the council feels. And I wonder if between now and when we potentially meet next, maybe we could get some input from the council. Maybe they need to think about it to see what is it that you want from us that would be helpful. Because then, so that we're working together. There's no adversarial issue here. This is how can we help you make better decisions or good decisions or more informed decisions with everything else you do as council people. And so I wonder if it's, we can think through that so the next meeting is very action oriented toward helping the council, if they think it's helpful. I mean, I hope you think this might be helpful. So.
And if you tuned in late at home, I did at the beginning of the meeting introduce a majority of our councils here tonight: Vice Mayor Don Horton, Councilmember Deb Gillis, and Councilperson Anna Richards. And so I believe the mayor and Councilmember Freeman may be tuning in. And so they're very aware of the questions, and I think they do welcome the input. and we certainly do too. We're going to, once again, try to use our newsletter, which has been getting good reception, to get some of these questions and answers out there. I'm assuming with your permission, we'll probably go ahead and post your contact information now that people have seen you in action, and they may want to contact you guys directly and ask questions, et cetera. So we'll go ahead and get that on the website too, and have that interaction with citizens. Maybe you raised some questions that weren't raised tonight or weren't answered the right way. And as far as the council goes, we talk almost daily individually, and so I'll certainly be working with them on the budget too and answering their questions too. So before we end up, Joe, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I would just say thank you, for opening up and being willing to take criticism and take questions and allow us to, collaborate and chew on these things. I did receive calls from a few neighbors and friends already, and colleagues and different folks in the community, and they feel empowered when they have a voice and when they have a way to, they feel like they have someone listening to them and a way to communicate. And, we have these meetings. It's like the meeting last week you had on the ballpark and all that. And there's lots of different voices and different opinions and different ideas. And it's great because, when everybody thinks the same, nobody's thinking at all. And so the ability to do this, I think, really gets us to a good place. So I appreciate you including me in it and just doing it, because it's a pretty bold move.
And I think the idea, Ron, that you had of keeping us all separate during this is really, really important to allow those different ideas to flow.
And I think the good thing about that was, number one, we identified some common concerns without you talking to each other. Now that it's been public, and it's not a problem, I want you to meet at least one more time as a group. And once again, Joe Roth wants to participate. He couldn't do it tonight, but his written report is online. But he's the one that came up with the suggestion of y'all meeting once this was done, because we didn't want to have any sunshine law issues. Plus, the main thing was to be an independent review. And I think you can see it was independent. There was some overlap, but it wasn't intentional. It's because you identified some of the same things, the lobbyist fees, legal fees, some things we were already looking at. But the fact that you came overtime, those are some common concerns that we were aware of, but we wanted to make sure the public had a chance to listen to your issues. Anything else from the public before we wrap it up? Okay, well, once again, I want to thank all 5 of you for participating. You obviously put a lot of time and effort into this, and we appreciate that, and we look forward to working with you going forward. And thanks again for everybody online and in person attended tonight. Meeting adjourned.